Hi everyone, my name is Bo Sanders and I am fascinated with different traditions and expressions of religious belief. For me, that's primarily the church. And I just love to read about and think about and talk with other people about the different and diverse ways that faith can express itself in local communities. As I travel, I hear people breaking it down in different ways, like rural, urban, and suburban. That's a really interesting distinction. Sometimes we break it down by denomination, groups that are more evangelical, mainline, charismatic, Pentecostal within the Protestant tradition. You can even do it by size, small, medium, and large, and all of those merit a study because the nuances within those categories are actually really fascinating and telling, and there's a lot to learn from each other in that. But I have come up with something I think is kind of unique. And in my travels and interacting with different thinkers and different leaders, I have sort of noticed that churches break down in three different postures and emphases of how they relate to the status quo or the system or the powers that be, depending on what you want to call it. And that is a therapeutic, a messianic, or a prophetic emphasis. And I'll explain all of those in just a minute. Nerdy side note. I first came up with this scheme almost 10 years ago by interacting with the thinking of people like Mark Ellis, the Jewish liberation theologian, Cornel West, the public intellectual and proponent of the prophetic tradition, and Slavoj Žižek, the philosopher who interacts with the psychoanalytic theory of Jacques Lacan. It's also really interesting that inside each of these categories or primary approaches is a secondary emphasis almost across the board. This is what I find. And then something that is completely neglected, that the third category is quite deficient. Here are the three primary approaches. The messianic is looking for help from outside of the system. And so whether that's ultimately the second coming of Christ or intercessory prayer, it is an interventionist approach that looks for help, a fix from outside of the existing system. A litmus test might be for this: if you believe in things like the second coming, end times theology, intercessory prayer, things like that, you might be in a Messianic church. Therapeutic Church takes a different approach, and it helps you to adjust to life within the given system, life as it is now. That in all of the formulas of life, that you work the variables, right, and sort of assume the givens. And so churches like this might have a sermon series about your best life now. They often have confirmation classes for their youth. It is established order is more of a therapeutic approach to help you get along as things currently are. A prophetic approach tries to change the system, and whether that's through advocacy or legislation, protest, whatever it is, that they're actually trying to change the system as it currently is. So, just to recap, the messianic is looking for a fix or salvation from outside the system. The therapeutic is helping you adjust to life within the system. And the prophetic is trying to change the system. Now here's where, for me, this gets really interesting. I have figured out that each of those three approaches has a secondary emphasis, usually. And almost across the board, I find this. So Messianic churches are often also a little bit therapeutic. And so while you're waiting for the second coming or deliverance, right, through the interventionist prayer, that there is a therapeutic element to it to help you get along with life now. That leaves the prophetic, the changing of the current system, to be neglected. So unfortunately, in that little formulation, the prophetic is often neglected, and that means that we don't talk about things like tax reform or legislation. And so that element of changing the current system is often seen as sort of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, and so there is a sort of an abandonment of trying to fix this broken system. Therapeutic churches often have a prophetic element where they are into social justice and advocacy for those who are marginalized and disadvantaged. But unfortunately, that leaves the messianic expectation that there is help from outside the system, often is the neglected or trailing aspect of their life of faith. And then in the prophetic tradition, there is also often a messianic element to it, that let justice roll down, and that God will intervene and ultimately bring things to right. So even in the prophetic tradition, there's often a messianic component. But what that often leaves is the therapeutic to be either neglected or trailing, which results in people being worn out and burned out and in deep need of like personal edification. So that has been what I have found so far, is that you have these three sort of categories of church and how they relate to the powers that be, the systems, the status quo, however you want to frame that. That there's a secondary emphasis that often fuels the primary focus and approach. And then there's a neglected element. So ultimately, I'm hoping to write this up and have it as a chapter in my book. I have this dream of writing an ecclesiology, a view of the church for the 21st century, about how we're all connected within this web of meaning, and viewing not just church and faith and life and society that way, but to integrate how we engage with the status quo and our expectations for what effect that might have on our real, concrete, lived realities. I would love to get your thoughts on this. I'm actually preaching on this on Sunday. I'm presenting it for sort of the first time. And so if there are questions or comments, concerns that you could contribute that would help me refine this before I go public with it, that would be great. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your shares and your likes and your comments. They help me out a ton.